Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us today. My name is Faris Alami. This is Global Entrepreneurship Week, celebrated in over 200 countries globally, and it happens to be also Startup Grind. I'm lucky enough to be the host in Michigan for both organizations in collaboration with many other partners in the state as well as globally. So welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited today because I've been fortunate enough to know Juan Carlos and through his journey and watching his industry and business continues to unfold is fantastic. And I'm really looking forward to having him share his journey through the process of me asking him some few questions. And of course, having him just be open and honest as much as he can with the audience here. Thanks for joining us, Jason. All right. With that, let's jump in. Juan Carlos, I'm lucky to know you, and I think most people here will know who you are. It'll be great if you would like to go ahead and just tell the audience. As you know, we are recording this to be re-aired during next week and the weeks after. We are recording it during Global Entrepreneurship Week, and we are recording it for also Startup Grind in collaboration with two organizations. And I'm lucky enough to be the host for those two organizations here in collaboration with many other individuals and organizations in the state. So with that, maybe you can just tell them who's Juan Carlos, just from a business perspective or a personal perspective, whatever you would like. You're welcome to share.
You know what I'm coming to terms with, Ferris? I think that I am the kind of like business owner slash entrepreneur that like has learned how to do business in the neighborhood. I mean, I don't really know what else to say aside from that. Like that really feels like my nature. I think that I have, I've been part of the ecosystem, the business ecosystem since 2015, since 2010. But 2010 to 2015 was a totally different story. And Featherstone started in 2015, and since then, I feel like I've kind of, tried to lean into the way that corporate America does things and hire things. And I've also tried to lean into the way that I feel like is my true nature. And I will say that I go back to the good old days when I was 10, 11, when I used to sell cheesecakes door to door. And I used to know, I used to know the people that lived in every single street in Southwest Detroit. And it's become a very important foundation for who I am today as a business owner.
Thank you so much. So, I mean, I'm gonna have to dig a little bit deeper on that if you allow me. So, I want to
Yeah,
hear about
absolutely. I'll let
cheesecakes.
you know when I don't feel comfortable.
Yeah, and you could stop it absolutely. And but before we get to dig to the cheesecake selling door to door, I would love to hear what does your company do today and what's the name of it?
Featherstone. It
Yeah,
is Featherstone. Um, a new iteration of Featherstone Moments, which existed before. And we do marketing and public relations. But what we truly define ourselves as is a company of creatives who lead with trust, and we just happen to do marketing and PR.
lovely. Thank you so much for that. So let's dig right in. So this entrepreneurial journey that you've taken, selling, was that your first thing, selling cheesecakes? Was that your first venture, or did you have before something else?
Officially, probably not. I think so. I have been doing art since I was a kid. I mean, quite frankly, I remember just being good at drawing and really enjoying it. And when I was maybe in fifth grade, fourth grade, I used to sell my drawings to different people. Different kids would pay me, and they were probably bad. They were probably not great, but I felt like I could do something that made me happy, and I didn't have a semblance of how money operated back then. And then 2001, I began working with my parents out of our house. We made cheesecakes almost every single day, Monday through Saturday. On Monday through Friday after school, I would bake with my mom. We would close them up. We would go, and then my dad would come home door to door. He taught me how to sell. I was a pretty shy kid. I mean, quite frankly, I still think I'm a pretty shy kid, but he taught me how to sell. He taught me how to be able to speak when I was uncomfortable. Later on, I became the face of the business, and all my little neighbors and all my classmates' parents started calling me El Chisquero, which is the cheesecake guy. And I continue to keep that title with a couple of people that are still around from back then.
Yeah, if you allow me, thank you so much for sharing that. What a journey. I wanted to know this idea of selling art. What was behind it? Why did you want to do that? Did you feel like you needed money, or were you surrounded by other entrepreneurs that were doing something similar? I'm just curious to understand the mindset that you had to think at a young age that you want to do something and make some money on it in return. And I don't know if you even sold it for money or you sold it for toys, or I don't know what you did. I don't know the details, but I'd love to hear.
I think that as much as there are, conflicting things having grown up in the family that I grew up with, I can look back and understand that everybody in my family was trying to do the best with what they had, and they were still growing up, and they were, still like processing life, and they processing trauma. But one of the things that I have come to terms with, and I'm really, really, really grateful, is that my mom taught me from a very young age that I could do whatever the hell I wanted. And it was not necessarily with arrogance. It was like, you can define your life. And I remember that as a kid, I don't know why, but I would think about what I wanted to leave behind. And I mean, quite frankly, I still don't know what I want to leave behind. But I remember thinking, well, I know that when I die, I want to make sure that at least I am in one history book. And that sort of began to be the way that I operated in life. I was free, and I was a dreamer, and drawing was one of those ways in which I could express myself. And, on one hand, I was trying to be good at it. On the other hand, I learned that if I was good at something because I put my heart into it, people reacted in a very positive way. And that made me feel good. And that sort of like closed the cycle of what my mom was trying to teach me. And so I think that I was selling art, not necessarily for the money, but more for like this feeling that I was doing something that made me happy. And I think that that's something that is sort of punched out of you with life, and something that I think as of today I'm beginning to realize again. And so I'm sure that I learned some things about business. I'm sure that I did some things for business. I also used to sell these little postcards that the banks would give us with the images, like a photo of La Selección Mexicana, which is the Mexican soccer team that played in FIFA like 98. And that's also how I made money. And it seemed like it was something that made other people happy, and it made me happy. And that's just really the way that I approached it. No more than that. Just finding some sort of happiness and purpose in life.
It sounds like really also survival, right? So the idea of survival, doing the best of what you have is something you mentioned, and then potentially leveraging your knowledge or your network, whatever you had your hands on, to be able to leave a legacy, but also or leave an impact, but also make some money in the process. Is that sound? Am I summarizing it in a meaningful way, or no?
No, I would say that the survival part came later. I
Okay.
think that we grew up in poverty, and but when I was 8, I did not understand poverty. Like
Yep.
I never felt poor. I felt like, quite frankly, I felt insulated, and I felt rich, and I felt like I had everything that I needed.
Yep.
And later on, when we came to the United States, when life started to change and take a turn, that's when I realized, oh shoot, these skills have to be put to the test, and they have to be taken advantage of because of survival, not necessarily because like I wanted them to. And I think that I've operated for a really long time with this idea that I'm in business to survive, but I think that there's something much deeper, and people respond to me and people respond to other people with like wealth, with like abundance, and I'm starting to lean into that a little more.
Thank you so much. And clearly sounds like a book in the writing, maybe on the journey. I'm going to fast forward
Hopefully.
to your current business today and love to hear. So what made you want to start this new venture? And there might be a series of moments, and I acknowledge that. Maybe you could just pinpoint one or two that you felt like these were the points where you felt this is the opportunity or this is the problem or whatever you want to say that made you feel like this is the time to do this?
I think it was a combination of things. It was necessity, it was pride, and also self-reliance. So something that is very, very important to get to know who I am is that I came here to the US in 1999 and I was undocumented for 14 years. And somewhere in the middle of me being undocumented, my parents uh, were deported voluntarily back to Mexico. And so I stayed here in the US since I was 17. Coming out of poverty, coming out of like a rough family, I was taught that, you know what, like, you're not going to ask the world for permission. And so I just decided to start living life and kind of venturing into what I thought was courageous, but now looking back was probably stupidity. And so in 2015, after I became documented, or I got my DACA, I started leaning away from like, well, I'm just doing these jobs for survival, into like exploring what it is that I wanted to do. I worked at Starbucks. I worked at a nonprofit as a parent organizer. I worked at the Joe Louis Arena and at the Tiger Stadium as a photographer. I had multiple jobs, sometimes 3 or 4 at the same time. And I remember that in 2015, one of my dad's closest friends, which I will never give him a referral, pulled me over, and he was like, "Hey, like, I want to do this thing, and I want you to do it, and you're good with art, and I want you to lead my marketing department." And I left with the promise that he was going to help me figure life out, and that I was going to help him figure out his business. And then 3 days in, he basically backed off of his promise. And I had already, told Starbucks that I wasn't going to be there. So I had to figure life out pretty quickly. And I remember that particular day, I was driving to Ypsilanti on 94, having this phone conversation, and I just like didn't know what to do. So I went back home. I slept on it. I took a nap in the middle of the day. And then I asked myself, okay, what would my parents do? What would like other people in my life do that have had to survive? And I think that on one hand, the fire like that was lit like beneath me was that I only had $200 in the bank, and I was going through like a divorce, and I had kids, so I needed to do something. So I started going to different businesses, using my skills as a photographer or using my skills in media. And I was like, hey, like, here's what I do. And I started getting little jobs here and there. And Featherstone really became a business out of necessity more than a business out of like, oh yeah, like I feel confident in this. I don't think I've ever felt as confident as I feel today, but um, every single year, every single success, every single failure has been a test of learning something new. And I love Featherstone, but it is not a romantic story. It is very much a story of survival, at least up to today.
No, I mean, well, thank you so much for sharing that, Juan Carlos. I mean, these are, whenever I hear stories like that, I always appreciate and thank you for being open to expose the difficult journey that you might have taken, because a lot of times we just look at where you are today or what's happening today, and we just take it for granted that behind every person there's a story, and there are usually lots of stories that we could probably unfold with this discussion that we won't have enough time obviously to do all of those things, but having that kind of openness allows others who are listening and tuning in and hopefully get the chance to interact with you to understand that there are lots of opportunities that could open up doors. Sometimes it's not necessarily the opportunities that you want to take, but you have to take, that makes it happen. And this is where you might have started, but clearly you continued, right? Because you could have easily gotten back and got another job or done something else, but you chose to take this path and knock on some doors and ask them if they could allow you to, do your work with them and take in return of some cash, right? So this is thank you so much. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So when do you think the moment that now that you've survived it, right? This is the first early years. And some of it is obvious technology because it's photography and, editing and all those things. When did you hire your first person and you felt like, all right, I got a company now, not just a job? If
Well,
you ever thought, I don't know.
I think that I hired my first person, and I felt like I had a company at a very different moments in life. So I hired my first um, contractor, not employee. I hired my first contractor probably in 2016. And more than likely, it was my best friend who I feel like he's come really far. He's actually about to publish, he's about to screen a film that he did on being undocumented as a Latino in America. And I'm really, really excited about that. But he was my first contractor. And I asked him for help when after we got a contract with a Buick dealership. Like, I mean, I never thought that I was gonna be working for like, like a dealership and like let alone, like one of these fancy like the three automotive companies ones. And he helped me for a little while, and that sort of helped me understand more about what it is that I could do and what it is that I could offer. And there was a lot of trial and error, but I think that the moment that I felt like I had a company was probably in 2018 or 19 when we finally moved from contractor basis to W-2s. And oh my God, the change was tough. You had to pay way more. You had to be more aware of what was going on. I think that there is a difference between the way that, like, as a leader, it is really important to be a good leader. And I think that leadership reflects, employees, and employees reflect leadership. But I think that one of the like more challenging things is that there were just so many more expectations. And I mean, whether you like it or not, you become responsible for the people that work for you and with you, and you become responsible, at least in some part, for their families. And that's when it like takes shape. Like, if I make one wrong decision, it's not just going to affect me and my kids. It's going to affect everybody that's around me in some way, shape, or form. And even it's going to affect our clients and their employees. And so that's when it started to really feel like there was a company. I didn't feel like I was a leader. That was a totally different time. But it definitely sets the tone for when the transition happened.
Thank you so much. And how I know you mentioned was it 2017? You said when that happened.
I think it was 18. I think it was March of 2018.
So a couple of years later, it's when you felt like this. Now, in the technology space, I always say that it's sometimes hard because there's a balance act between the skills of the individual that have as far as technical, and then the skills that they have as far as people and relationships and things of that nature. And I know sometimes it's easier for some people to have those two together. Just my experience has been many times people struggle to that. So what did you do to balance hiring people that you trusted, that you could know that they could deliver work, and having the people that you might have not known, but had the work that you needed to get done? I'm just curious.
I
And you
don't
don't
think
have
I've
to
ever
answer
learned
that
that
helps.
all the way.
Good.
I don't think that I would say that that is probably very much like sculpting the idea of a leadership. And when you're sculpting, you sort of start with this block, right? Like there's just like something that doesn't have a form, and you slowly start, like chipping away at it. You're going to be, like, or you can use your hands to mold it. And essentially what you learn is that as you're molding, maybe you don't get the shape that you're looking for. Like, you try and you fail, so that means that you have to try again. And I think that um as it's starting to, like, as the mold is starting to take shape of what I want Featherstone to be, I am feeling like like a leader is, and especially thinking about these two relationships between tech and competence, right? Or like competence and relationships, which are the two. I think that there is a balance between what the vision is, where you can have a fully competent team that sucks at relationships, or you can have a really good team at relationships that sucks at competence. And I think that neither one of those is going to be, successful for what it is you're trying to do. So I think it really, really depends on defining the vision. I will say that for me, I'm starting to like realize that the shape has to be balanced. It can't be too, like, it can't be too stark in one style, but it can't also be like too lacking in another. It has to like find some sort of way. And I think that every single time that there is a trial and error, like I remember the first time was with someone that I hired that used to work for the Red Wings as something doing in marketing. And this particular person was doing good work in some places, but did not understand who the heck Featherstone was, or who I was for that matter, and never asked. And so the work got done, but choices started, like becoming more for this person, I think, about the money associated with those choices, not the impact associated with those choices, or the people associated with those choices. And that was one of the first times where I felt like I needed to make a tough decision. Um, and I don't think that I made a tough decision well. I think that I was somewhat reckless, but dealing with the consequences of that recklessness at least gave me the opportunity to introspect. And I think that it's happened consequently every single year after that. And sometimes it's with the people that work with us, sometimes it's with the clients. Ooh, I have some client stories, let me tell you. Sometimes it's with yourself, and sometimes it's like, I think that right now the biggest thing that I am learning is that I cannot mold Featherstone to what I want it to be unless I do it with like my true nature and my true self, which is that of like somebody who's curious and who cares about relationships and who is an artist and who wants to try and is willing to fail, to find something beautiful and to find something that like I know that is there but it's not there yet, and I think it's like I do it in drawing more than anything. I do it in photography, but I'm like more along for the journey than for the destination, if that makes sense. And I think that that's how I would categorize this dilemma between competence and relationships. Both matter so much and they're empty without the other.
Thank you so much for that explanation. Yeah, I mean, I'm a firm believer that it's hard to mold the growth. I always tell people you could try to influence it, but once you start hiring smart people around you, especially in the tech space, right, they're going to do what they think is right, and they're going to take in different directions, and you kind of have to try to influence them as much as you can to the direction that you want to take. But at the end of the day, they might actually help you uncover a better way to do something, right? I mean, that's usually what, if they're obviously solid with their skills.
I would say to that, to add a piggyback off of that, that the thing that I'm learning right now as a leader, and it has taken me a very long time, is that sometimes it is best to get out of the way than to pretend that I have all the answers. And I think that is the artist complex of the ego, of the I can do this. Maybe it's something else, but that's probably the thing that I'm struggling with the most at the moment.
Yeah, well, I always tell people you'll never find a person like you. Sorry, Jason, did you want to say it? Do you ask a
I just
question?
wanted to ask you, may I ask a question?
Of course.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. I read the other day, one of the top executives at one of the top car companies who came to Detroit from the West Coast, from a very famous company there. I'd like to know if you agree with this or have a feeling about this, but he, in explaining people, you're talking about the team, basically said, hey, A people like to work with A people, B people hire C people, C people hire D people. So I thought maybe you have a comment on that.
I think that that's something that I am currently exploring is our constant desire for more. And what I mean by that is that the way that, especially in business, I think that in other fields is a little bit different, but especially in business, success is measured by metrics that are positive, not that are negative. And in order for there to be continuous success, those metrics need to remain positive, but also they need to remain positive at a high ratio. And I think that in this particular case, when you look at nature, which is very different from when you look at, like the corporate world or capitalism, what I would call, nature has this means of rejuvenating itself and sort of going through cycles of up and down, kind of like the waves. And I think that I see, especially, I think that on one hand I'm a very artistic mind, on the other hand I'm a very mathematical mind, and I love derivatives. I think that the rate of change with which A people working with A people creates a culture where everybody else sort of like expects more from others is very different and very disconnected from nature. Whereas in nature, you as an A person might have a responsibility to a C or a D person, and you try to build a relationship between A and C, which I think that given the million and millions of years that the Earth has been around, we have something to learn right there. And quite frankly, humans have been around for a very short period of time in comparison to bees and in comparison to other organisms that will probably stay alive after we're gone. But I think that A people oftentimes forget where we come from and who got them there, and they could do a little better.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Yeah, so great question, of course. So
stirring the pot.
Yeah, stirring the pot. That's great. Well, that's I think we could easily spend hours talking and days talking about the talent and to cultivate it, and the different methodology and philosophy and approaches to leadership, as well as talent gathering. I do believe diversity in the team can help, as you know, to engage different cells of your brain that could potentially create creativity, that could potentially create better solutions, and it broadens your horizon. So and I know that Jason believes that too. So it's always interesting to unfold, and it's easier actually to find people like you, especially if you're kind of like want to get things done. You just want to get things done. But what I would like to highlight is something I learned through my journey in working with thousands of entrepreneurs globally, is that you could be great at a lot of things, but you're probably really the best at one or two things that you are not aware of sometimes. Sometimes you are aware.
Mm-hmm.
Hiring a person that not necessarily good at all the stuff that you're doing, but finding like one thing that you like need them to do. An example, in your case, building a website or writing a code or whatever, right? That one thing, you might be able to find a person who's actually 10 times better than any of us could ever be, right? Because that's all they want to do. And I think building a team in the tech space could potentially be a easier way to focus on what are the things that I need to build in my company, and can I find one person that's really good at this one thing? It doesn't mean that they can do other stuff, but I want them to be better than me at this one skill that potentially could help you build a stronger team that allows you to, I call it, getting them to help you jump through those leaps. So therefore, you're not taking the journey of a regular business growing, but therefore just jumping and leaping from one place to another because you are able to find those specific skills that you want to have someone doing better than you. And another example I use is like accounting. Sure, we could do accounting. It's just an Excel sheet and you add the numbers. But you could find someone that, maybe have built some of these things better, and they could come in and out in 2 to 4 hours, be done, where you and I might take us 20 hours to get it done. So
Yeah.
these are the things that, could potentially be an opportunity. I'm just curious to hear about your journey doing, navigating that kind of water.
I would say that what I have been trying to do is definitely there's the soft skills and there's the hard skills, right? I cannot code for the life of me. If somebody put me in the room and said code or or we'll do some harm to you, I would get the harm done. Right? Like, unfortunately. Well, that is a hard skill. But I think that there are soft skills that are very many times underlooked. And the most
smart skills. Let's get away from this soft skills out.
Okay.
Smart skills.
Small skills. So I would say that the smallest of the skills that is underlooked is people's ability to want to improve, or people's ability to want to learn, which is very different from knowing already. And I think that especially for our team, we are in such a good place. And I'm not going to say financially, I'm not going to say that we've made it. Like, I think that we have a really long way, but at least I can see a vision. But I think that the one true skill that everybody shares is that they know that they're not the best, that they know that they can improve, and that they're surrounded by people who are like, you know what, I also want to improve, so let's improve together. And so I think that if I were to classify small skills and hard skills, I would probably say that for me, it's probably an 80-20 rule, where the 20 rule is the hard skills and the 80 rule is the small skills of we know how to talk to people, we know how to adapt, we know how to provide and receive feedback, and we want to grow. And there's curiosity.
And not small skills. I call them smart skills.
Smart skills. Okay.
Yeah.
Smart
They're
skills.
not small.
Ooh,
they're actually, they make the difference actually.
Smart skills.
Cool.
I like it.
I'm trying to change the world. Like, every time I hear that, I'm like, can we change that? Don't call them
I will support you.
Smart. All right. No, thank you, Juan Carlos. I mean, clearly we can keep here all day discussing this. I'm curious, where do you see your company going next? We are where you are today. I'm assuming you have different types of clients that you're working with. Would love to hear where you go, where do you see yourself next, year, maybe next 5, not next 50, but just next year to 5.
Next year, I see myself becoming a company that prioritizes its employees over everything else. Because what I've learned is that when you do that, then your employees will feel valued enough that they will not want to search for anything else. And if they do, it's because of something much bigger related to their identity than related to their wallet. And number 2, in 5 years, or hopefully less, I see a company that is worker-owned. And that's not a co-op. I have no idea what the heck it is. I don't want to put any labels yet. I don't want to constrain myself. But I want an agency that is worker-owned. And I'm a little inspired by Zimmerman, quite frankly. I need to do the leadership thing in Jiggy. So yeah, that's what I see in the near future.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. In the technology space, as you know, things change. And I'm curious to know, like, what do you feel like you're doing or want to do or need to do to keep up with all the changes? And I mean, the best example would be like WordPress versus AI building a page, right? I know this sounds really dumb, but I just thought, let's simplify it just to make it that easy. I'm curious to know, like, what are you envisioning and what are some of the things that you as a tech company continues to do to stay on top of tech versus, and I know you might not see yourself as a tech company, just curious to know, what are you doing to stay on top of it as much as you can?
Quite frankly, nothing. I'm trying to not stay on top of it and let other people stay on top of it.
Yeah, and that's a great answer, right? If you have already an audience that could, and that I think this is powerful for those who are listening to say, hey, you got an audience and you could continue to grow those audiences. You could find the people, right? It's just not, it might get a little harder to find them with time, but for now it's working. So why change it if it's, if it's not broken, don't break it. Sometimes you might need to break it because it needs to be broken.
Yeah. No, I think that the only two things in life that are absolutely true at any given moment are change and death. And I think that oftentimes we get so caught up in trying to keep up with the change that we forget about the lack of permanence of life. And so this is not a entrepreneurial forward thinking model, but I try not to care. I try not to care about what's going on in the changes. I definitely try to care about what's going on in the world, but try not to care about what's changing, because if I get caught up in that, then I forget about what's changing here within my own circle.
Yeah. Thank you for that. If anyone else would like to ask questions, just let me know. I'm going to ask one, maybe last question before we conclude. My next question is, if you were to go back in time, and although it's really hard to do that, Juan Carlos, meaning that the knowledge that you know today and the journey that you've taken today got you here, and you didn't know what you know today, looking back to try to give yourself an advice is usually a very hard thing to do, because at the time, you don't know what you know now, and you don't know the journey that you're taking. But assuming that you know what you know, and go back and advise yourself, knowing what you knew back then or thought you knew back then, what would you tell someone who's in your shoes that may be starting today about the grind that they may have to take, or about the journey that they might have to do? What would be like one or two advice that you would leave behind?
I would say two. Thing number one, always remember where you came from. Thing number two, always give credit where credit is due.
Okay. Thank you so much, and congratulations on the success of the journey, and wishing you the best of continuous of success of journey. If anyone else would like to ask, I'm not sure. I know we usually don't have audiences, so it's nice to have an audience. We usually record it and then air it, and then let people ask questions in the chats. But this is great that you're all here. Philip, Jason, Marvin, any questions or thoughts? Or you're welcome to introduce yourself as well.
How you doing? I'm Marvin Yates, and I wear a couple of different hats. One of the hats I wear is as an instructor with Prosperous Detroit, and I've been with Prosperous for about 8 years now. And I've been blessed with the association of Mr. Juan Carlos Perez for a number of years. He has been a sheer joy to work with. He's been very giving of himself and his company in nurturing the entrepreneurs that have come through my several cohorts since we first met. And whenever I've called on him or called him, he's always responded, and he has taken some of our entrepreneurs above and beyond, and he's actually got them started and done some excellent work for them and put them on the map. So hats off to him, and my hats off to you as well, Mr. Alami, for celebrating him today and actually getting his story out here, because it's a tremendous story. He's a tremendous person. And once again, I'm just so glad to be associated with him.
Thank you, Mr. Yates. That means a lot. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Marvin. I appreciate you being here as well. So, Philip, I saw you on mute, so if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, Phil Swanson. I work with Centropolis Accelerators, an expert in residence.
Second floor, Tech Town.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. So I'm actually over here at the building right now. Myself actually live in Italy at the moment. My wife's on an expat assignment, so I'm back for a couple of weeks, but I'll be back full time and be, considerably more embedded in the ecosystem of Detroit first part of next year. but want to be great to connect to see if we can help you get embedded or work with some of our companies here as they come out of the accelerator. We've got a bunch that need the skill sets that you guys provide in some of the work. So feel free to kind of reach out to me and we can set up something. You can come check out Centropolis and meet some of the entrepreneurs. But we were constantly moving companies through. They're hard tech founders. They're not usually they struggle a little bit on the marketing and the brand development side. So they could definitely use, we could definitely use another pair of hands who has a little bit of background in that business development and marketing side.
Thank you so much for that. I would love to chat. And I'm going to get your contact information from Ferris.
All right, awesome. Take care.
And good luck in Italy, man. Please take advantage of it.
It was, we've been there 2 years. We've got about 4 months left. So, I'm gonna be glad to be back to Michigan, but I'm also gonna miss all the things that Italy offers. Mainly all the fresh food. It's great.
That's amazing. Thank you.
The weather.
The weather, yes. So it's actually the same temperature in Milan right now. Although tonight it's supposed to get down in the 20s. So I'm leaving at the perfect time. I'm heading back this evening, so I get to miss all the bad weather, thankfully.
And of course, the I call it the friendly, emotional people all around.
Oh, very. They live with their heart on their sleeve for sure. I love it.
Jason, you want to tell them who you are and what you do?
Well, what I really want to say is I'm looking around now for a piece of that cheesecake.
I started, I began selling. So I sold them when I was 11. So from 11 to 13, I sold them again when I was 18. People still were happy about them. I've had multiple people tell me, hey, if you ever make them, let me know. And about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I taught my daughter how to make them, and we've been making them. So I'll take you one next time. Maybe I don't know how soon. I don't want to promise, but I'll take you some cheesecake one of these days, and I'll text you about it.
Maybe Jason, you could help him figure out how to do white labeling so he doesn't have to make them. Just and outsource it, Anyway.
All I'll say is I've watched Juan Carlos standing on his feet all day long, more hours than anybody else, working to build his business and bring in more and more people and whiteboards and groups. Everything started with him. So I think he has walked the walk. And so it's very proud to know him as well as I do.
That is very kind and generous. Thank you, Jason.
No, thank you so much. All right. Well, with that, it really concludes our gathering today. I want to take this moment and say thank you so much for being with us. This is Global Entrepreneurship Week here in Michigan. We're celebrating it globally in over 200 countries. I'm the host, one of the hosts in Michigan. And of course, also this is Startup Grind today with what we're doing it with. And I'm also lucky enough to be the director of Detroit Startup Grind, which is also another international organization that has these kinds of chapters all over the country. And in addition to that, on a day-to-day, I'm obviously the founder of International Strategic Management, where we do entrepreneurship and small business development, helping entrepreneurs write business plans or strategies. And as well, of course, we'll work with the organization that supports them, helping them come up with strategies to support the entrepreneurs. Anyway, thank you for being with us. I really appreciate you all being here.
Thanks so much, y'all.
Celebrations for the week. And we'll be re-airing a lot of these things over the next few weeks as well. So please feel free to repost, tag, and things of that nature. We really appreciate it. The governor kicked us off this week, and we had Quentin send us a beautiful message, and we'll have from MEDC. So we'll have lots of wonderful people and different presentations we've had. And as the week gets closer to conclusion, I want to just say thank you for your support and thank you for being with us.